High Admiral Vextar stood at the bridge of the Kraxan Empire's most advanced scout vessel, his scaled fingers drumming against the crystalline display console. The holographic projection of Earth rotated slowly before him, a blue jewel suspended in the void. His lip curled in what passed for a smile among his species, revealing rows of metallic dental implants, a status symbol among the Kraxan elite. Primitive, he muttered, watching as primitive radio waves and scattered electromagnetic emissions leaked from the planet's surface. Simply primitive. The Kraxan Empire had spent the last solar cycle observing this backwater world, gathering intelligence on its inhabitants. These humans, as they called themselves, still burned fossil fuels, fought among themselves over arbitrary territorial boundaries, and had barely managed to reach their own moon. Their most advanced computers were laughably simple compared to even the most basic Kraxan neural interfaces. High Admiral, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Krylax, approached with a data crystal. The latest surveillance report from our stealth probes. Vextar inserted the crystal into his neural port, information flooding his enhanced consciousness. He watched through the probe's eyes as humans went about their daily lives, completely unaware they were being studied. Their cities were congested, inefficient. Their weapons were crude projectile devices and primitive atomic bombs. Their space presence was limited to a handful of crude satellites and a single, tiny orbital station. To think, Vextar chuckled, some members of the Imperial Council actually suggested we should be cautious about this species. The Kraxan Empire had conquered dozens of worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Most species they encountered had at least achieved basic faster-than-light travel before being subjugated. But these humans, they were still centuries away from such achievements. Or so they thought. Their military capabilities, High Admiral? Krylax inquired, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. Negligible. Their most powerful weapons could barely scratch our lowest-grade shields. Their detection systems are so basic, they haven't even noticed our presence in their system. Vextar's laughter echoed across the bridge. They still use radar. The bridge crew joined in the laughter. The idea that radar could detect their quantum-shifted vessels was absurd. The Kraxan had mastered gravimetric cloaking centuries ago. Prepare a full invasion assessment, Vextar ordered. The Emperor will be pleased. This world has abundant resources, a slave-capable population, and best of all, no meaningful defenses. We can take it with a minimal fleet. As the crew busied themselves with preparations, Vextar continued studying the planet. These humans were fascinating in their primitiveness. They still celebrated minor technological achievements like reusable rockets and artificial intelligence as if they were revolutionary breakthroughs. Their entertainment broadcasts were filled with fantasies about space travel and alien contact, ironically oblivious to the real alien armada preparing to conquer them. High Admiral, Krylax interrupted his musings. We've detected something unusual in their communications. Oh. Vextar raised an eyebrow ridge. Have they finally invented something beyond radio waves? No, sir. But there's been a significant increase in their military communications over the past cycle. They appear to be conducting large-scale exercises. Multiple nations simultaneously. Vextar dismissed the concern with a wave. Likely coincidence. Or perhaps they're preparing for another one of their pointless internal conflicts. Continue monitoring, but proceed with invasion planning. I want a preliminary strategy within 3 cycles. What Vextar and his crew failed to notice was a pattern in the seemingly random human military exercises. They didn't see the purpose behind the apparent chaos of human technological development. They didn't understand why certain research facilities appeared to produce nothing despite massive energy consumption. They were so convinced of human primitiveness, they never questioned why their quantum probes occasionally experienced microsecond gaps in surveillance coverage. After all, what could a species that still used radar possibly hide from the mighty Kraxan Empire? As High Admiral Vextar retired to his quarters that night, he composed his report to the Emperor with complete confidence. The human species presents no significant military challenge. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their defenses are negligible. They remain completely unaware of our presence. I recommend immediate approval for invasion plans. Victory is assured with minimal resources required. The report was transmitted across the quantum network to the imperial capital. The Kraxan were convinced they had found an easy conquest. They had no idea they were playing directly into humanity's hands. Deep beneath the surface of Earth's oceans, in bunkers buried in mountain ranges, and in secret facilities scattered across the globe, humans were very much aware of their visitors. And they had been preparing for this moment for decades. The greatest deception in human history was about to reveal itself, and the Kraxan Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. In a facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display that would have made High Admiral Vextar's technology look primitive by comparison. The quantum-encrypted feed showed real-time positions of every Kraxan vessel in the solar system, their crystal-clear signatures standing out against the backdrop of space despite their supposed, perfect, cloaking technology. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Dr. Marcus Rivera, head of Project Shadowfall, stepped forward. His dark eyes reflected the holographic light as he manipulated the display with subtle hand gestures. The Kraxan continue to believe their surveillance is undetected. Our quantum mirage systems are feeding them exactly what they expect to see, an Earth struggling with primitive technology. What the Kraxan couldn't know, was that humanity had detected their first probe 15 years ago. That discovery had catalyzed the greatest unified effort in human history, all conducted under a veil of apparent normalcy and technological stagnation. "And our fleet?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. She'd helped design the deception protocol herself. "Ghost Division is maintaining perfect quantum shadows," Rivera replied, expanding a section of the display to show hundreds of massive vessels hidden in plain sight. The Kraxan's gravimetric sensors can't detect what exists in parallel quantum states. As far as they're concerned, these ships don't exist. The human vessels were technological marvels, but not in the way alien civilizations might have expected. Instead of pursuing traditional advancement paths, humanity had taken a radical approach. They'd developed technology that exploited the fundamental blind spots of advanced alien scanning systems. "The quantum mirage network is our greatest advantage," Chen mused, watching as another Kraxan probe passed directly through a hidden shipyard, seeing only empty space. "They're so convinced of their technological superiority, they never considered we might approach physics from an entirely different direction." The facility hummed with activity as technicians monitored the elaborate deception. Every human satellite was wrapped in quantum shadows, broadcasting primitive signals while containing far more advanced technology. Every military exercise visible to the Kraxan was a carefully choreographed dance, hiding the true movements of humanity's forces. "Latest intelligence from the Kraxan command ship?" Chen asked. Rivera pulled up a new display, showing intercepted quantum communications. "They're preparing their invasion assessment. High Admiral Vextar is exactly where we want him, completely convinced of our technological inferiority." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Kraxan's arrogance had made this deception possible. They were so certain of their superiority that they never questioned why their quantum probes occasionally glitched, why their gravimetric sensors sometimes showed momentary anomalies. They dismissed these signs, attributing them to their own technology's interaction with Earth's primitive electromagnetic fields. "Update from the Neptune Shade Front," a young lieutenant announced. "Ghost Division reports the last capital ship is in position. The quantum web is complete." Chen nodded, studying the tactical display. Humanity's hidden fleet now surrounded the solar system in a three-dimensional web of overlapping fields, invisible to Kraxan sensors but ready to materialize at a moment's notice. "What troubles me," Rivera said quietly, is how many other species might be watching us. The Kraxen aren't the only ones out there. Let them watch, Chen replied. The Kraxen will serve as an object lesson for any other civilization that thinks Earth is easy prey. Speaking of which, status on the Prometheus protocol. Rivera's expression turned serious. Ready for deployment. Once activated, it will disrupt their quantum communication network. Their fleet will be isolated, cut off from both their command structure and their advanced targeting systems. The Prometheus protocol was perhaps humanity's greatest achievement, a weapon that turned the aliens' technological superiority against them. The more advanced their systems, the more vulnerable they would be to the quantum disruption field. In another section of the facility, engineers were putting the finishing touches on weapons that would make the Kraxen's energy shields look like paper barriers. Not through brute force, but by exploiting fundamental weaknesses in their defensive technology that the aliens had never considered. Time estimate until they make their move? Chen asked. Based on their communication patterns, they'll likely begin their invasion within the next 48 hours, Rivera answered. They're confident enough to attack with a minimal fleet, just as we hoped. Chen studied the tactical display one final time, watching the invisible dance of humanity's hidden forces around the oblivious Kraxen ships. Years of preparation, trillions in secret funding, and the combined efforts of Earth's greatest minds had led to this moment. Send the final authorization codes to all Ghost Division commanders, she ordered. The moment the Kraxen make their move, we'll show them exactly what humanity is capable of. And may whatever gods they believe in have mercy on their souls, because we won't. As the orders went out through quantum-encrypted channels, humanity's hidden fleet silently readied itself for battle. The Kraxen Empire was about to learn that appearances could be deceiving, and that underestimating humanity was the last mistake they would ever make. The Kraxen invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, their black ships gleaming against the starfield. High Admiral Vextar stood proudly on his command bridge, watching as 500 warships moved into attack formation. By Kraxen standards, it was a small force, barely enough to subjugate a primitive world. Begin the attack sequence, Vextar commanded. Demonstrate our power. Let these humans understand the futility of resistance before we even fire a shot. The Kraxen fleet activated their terror protocols, broadcasting their presence across all electromagnetic frequencies. Their massive ships decloaked simultaneously, a show of force meant to paralyze their victims with fear. On Earth's surface, millions looked up as the alien vessels became visible in the daylight sky. But there was no panic. No chaos. No desperate military responses. High Admiral Krylax called out, confusion evident in his voice. The humans, they're not reacting as expected. Vextar frowned. Explain. Their military installations show no signs of alarm. Their global communications remain normal. It's as if. Krylax paused, his cybernetic eye whirring rapidly, as if they were expecting us. Before Vextar could respond, space itself seemed to ripple around his fleet. At first, he thought it was a malfunction in the view screens. Then he realized the truth, the empty void around his ships was filling with shadows that solidified into reality. Massive human warships materialized from quantum shadows, their dark hulls emblazoned with the symbols of Earth's united forces. Not hundreds, but thousands of vessels, each larger and more formidable than the Kraxen's finest warships. The human fleet had been there all along, waiting in parallel quantum states that the Kraxen's sensors couldn't detect. Impossible, Vextar whispered, watching as his fleet was surrounded on all sides. Their technology, they couldn't have. His words were cut short as every quantum communication channel suddenly went dead. The Prometheus protocol activated, severing the Kraxen fleet's neural networks and advanced targeting systems. Ships that relied on quantum-linked crews suddenly found their sophisticated systems reduced to minimal functionality. In the Rocky Mountain facility, General Chen watched the scenario unfold exactly as planned. Execute Phase 2, she ordered calmly. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, their formations tightening around the disoriented Kraxan ships. Unlike their enemies, Earth's vessels operated on hybrid systems specifically designed to function without quantum links. Their weapons were aimed at carefully calculated weak points in Kraxan shield geometry. This is some sort of trick, Vextar snarled, pounding his console as another system failed. They're primitives. They still use radar. Actually, a human voice cut through every Kraxan command channel, we let you think that. General Sarah Chen of Earth's Combined Defense Force speaking. Those radar emissions. Part of an elaborate deception. Just like the primitive satellites, the rudimentary AI, and the limited space presence. We've been watching you watch us, Admiral. For years. The first shots were fired not by the Kraxan, but by Earth's fleet. Weapons specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Kraxan shield harmonics tore through their supposedly impenetrable defenses. Ships that had survived centuries of galactic warfare found themselves crippled by attacks they couldn't even detect properly. All that time you spent studying us, Chen's voice continued, almost sympathetic, did you ever wonder why your probes occasionally glitched? Why your quantum sensors sometimes showed anomalies? You were so convinced of your superiority that you ignored every warning sign. Vextar watched in horror as his fleet's formation crumbled. Human ships seemed to phase in and out of normal space, making targeting impossible even for weapons that still functioned. Every Kraxan tactic, every advanced system, every technological advantage they thought they had was systematically neutralized by humans who had spent years preparing for this exact scenario. Your invasion fleet is already contained, Chen announced. You have two choices, Admiral. Immediate surrender, or we demonstrate exactly what happens when humanity stops pretending to be primitive. You have 5 minutes to decide. In the chaos of disabled systems and failing shields, Vextar finally understood. The humans hadn't been struggling to catch up with galactic technology, they had been deliberately choosing a different path, developing weapons and defenses that the Kraxan couldn't even comprehend, let alone counter. Status report, he demanded, but his crew could only stare at disabled consoles and dead neural links. Their mighty warships, the pride of the Kraxan Empire, had been reduced to floating hulks by an enemy they had fatally underestimated. The final blow to Vextar's pride came when he realized that the human fleet wasn't even moving to destroy his ships. They were simply holding position, their superior numbers and advanced technology making the outcome a foregone conclusion. Earth hadn't just prepared for this invasion, they had turned it into an elaborate trap, using the Kraxan's own arrogance as a weapon against them. As the 5-minute deadline approached, Vextar faced the most humiliating moment of his career. He, who had conquered dozens of worlds, would have to surrender to a species he had dismissed as primitive. The mighty Kraxan Empire was about to learn that technology wasn't just about advancement, it was about innovation, about thinking in ways your enemies couldn't imagine. And humanity, it seemed, had imagined quite a lot while pretending to be primitive. The surrender of the Kraxan fleet marked the beginning rather than the end. Within the captured flagship's command center, High Admiral Vextar sat rigidly in what had once been his command chair, now flanked by human guards whose advanced combat suits made his own military's equipment look antiquated. General Chen paced slowly before him, her presence somehow more intimidating than any alien warlord he'd encountered. You're probably wondering how we did it, Chen said, stopping to study a holographic display of the battle's aftermath. How a primitive species managed to not only detect your presence but develop technology beyond your understanding. Vextar's metallic teeth ground together. You deceived us. No, Admiral. You deceived yourselves. Your empire's greatest weakness isn't your technology, it's your arrogance. You saw exactly what you expected to see, a young species struggling with basic space flight and crude weapons. You never questioned why certain experiments produced no visible results, or why some of our research facilities seemed to consume massive amounts of energy while apparently achieving nothing. Around them, human technicians were systematically dismantling Kraxan systems, not to study them, but to ensure they couldn't be used to communicate with the Empire. The Prometheus Protocol had evolved from a temporary disruption into a permanent quantum barrier around the solar system, cutting off all advanced alien communication methods. Your quantum technology, your neural networks, your gravimetric sensors, they're all impressive achievements, Chen continued. But they all follow the same fundamental principles. We chose a different path. While you were perfecting faster-than-light travel, we were learning to manipulate the quantum shadows between spaces. While you built bigger ships and stronger shields, we developed ways to exist in multiple states of reality simultaneously. In orbit above Earth, the defeated Kraxan fleet hung motionless, surrounded by humanity's ghost ships. Teams of human engineers were already beginning to strip the alien vessels, not for their technology, but for raw materials. The message was clear: Earth didn't need or want Kraxan advancements. What happens now? Vexstar asked, his voice hoarse. Now. Now we send a message. Chen's expression hardened. Your empire will learn that Earth isn't just defended, it's a power that had the capability to destroy your fleet but chose not to. We could have annihilated every ship you brought, but that wouldn't serve our purposes. On screens throughout the command center, footage began playing, recordings from the battle, showing human ships phasing through Kraxan defenses like ghosts, weapons that ignored shield harmonics, and defensive systems that made Earth's fleet practically invulnerable to Kraxan attacks. This same footage was being broadcast across every frequency the Kraxan Empire used, a demonstration for any other civilization that might have similar invasion plans. Your crew will be treated well, Chen assured him. We're not conquerors or oppressors. But they'll remain here, along with you, as guests of Earth until certain arrangements are finalized. Arrangements? A new treaty. One that recognizes Earth not just as a sovereign world, but as a protected space. Any species that enters our solar system without permission will face consequences far worse than what your fleet experienced today. We're not interested in galactic conquest, Admiral. We simply want to be left alone to develop at our own pace, in our own way. Throughout the captured flagship, human technicians were installing new systems, not to use the ship, but to ensure it could never be used against Earth. The quantum shadows that had hidden humanity's true capabilities were being transformed into a permanent defense network, one that would make the solar system virtually impenetrable to conventional space travel. Your empire will adapt, Chen said, almost gently. You'll find new ways to travel that don't rely on quantum technologies. You'll develop new communication methods that can penetrate our barriers. And when you do, we'll be waiting with countermeasures you haven't even imagined yet. This isn't the end of our relationship with galactic civilization, it's just a renegotiation of terms. Vexstar watched as his mighty warships were systematically neutered by human technology. The pride of the Kraxan fleet, reduced to floating monuments to their own hubris. But something else bothered him even more than the military defeat. The other species, he said slowly. The ones we've conquered. When they learn of this. Chen's smile was cold. They already are. Every moment of this encounter has been broadcast across the galaxy. Your empire's subjected worlds are watching their invincible conquerors humbled by a species you dismissed as primitive. What do you think that will do to the Kraxan Empire's carefully maintained image of invincibility? The implications hit Vexstar like a physical blow. The Empire's control over its territories relied heavily on the belief that resistance was futile. Now, every subjugated species would know differently. They would look to Earth not just as a symbol of resistance, but as proof that the Kraxan could be defeated. We've done you a favor, Admiral, Chen said, turning to leave. We've shown your empire that there's more than one path to the stars. Perhaps now you'll learn to look beyond your own assumptions. Because I promise you, we're not the only ones who've been hiding our true capabilities. As human ships began towing the captured Kraxan vessels into predetermined holding positions, the message was clear to any watching civilizations: humanity hadn't just defended itself, it had revolutionized the very nature of galactic warfare. And they had done it all while convincing their enemies they were barely past the Stone Age. 6 months after the failed Craxan invasion, the galaxy had changed in ways few could have predicted. In the Grand Council chamber beneath Mount Everest, General Chen watched holographic feeds from across known space. The ripple effects of humanity's revelation were still spreading, transforming the political landscape of every known civilization. The Craxan Empire was crumbling. Not through military defeat, one failed invasion wasn't enough for that, but through something far more powerful, the destruction of fear. Dozens of subjected worlds had declared independence, armed with the knowledge that their oppressors weren't invincible. Some had even begun experimenting with humanity's quantum shadow principles, developing their own unique approaches to space travel and defense. Latest report from the Centauri observation post, Dr. Rivera announced, joining Chen at the display. 3 more civilizations have requested diplomatic contact. They're particularly interested in our technological development model. Of course they are, Chen replied, studying the data. We've shown them there's another way. The Craxan's linear path of technological advancement isn't the only option. The quantum barriers around Sol system remained active, but they were no longer just defensive measures. Humanity had refined them into selective filters, allowing approved ships to pass while maintaining absolute control over access to Earth space. More importantly, they served as a constant reminder that humans had achieved what many thought impossible. They had hidden an entire civilization's true capabilities from the galaxy's most advanced species. The Craxan diplomats are ready for today's session, Rivera noted. They're still struggling to understand how we managed it all. Chen smiled slightly. The Craxan representatives, including the now-reformed High Admiral Vextar, had spent months trying to comprehend how humanity had developed such radically different technology. They couldn't grasp that Earth's apparent technological failures had been its greatest successes. Each failed experiment in conventional space travel had pushed humans to explore alternatives that no other species had considered. What they still don't understand, Chen said, is that our greatest achievement wasn't the technology. It was convincing everyone that we didn't have it. The chamber's displays showed scenes from across Earth, massive shipyards emerging from quantum shadows, research facilities revealing their true purposes, defense systems that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The pretense of being a primitive civilization was over, but humanity had maintained its policy of technological discretion. They still didn't reveal everything they could do, a lesson learned from their years of deception. The Arcturus Federation's proposal arrived this morning, Rivera said, bringing up a new document. They want to establish a new galactic council. One based on innovation and cooperation rather than military might. They're suggesting Earth as the headquarters. It was ironic. Humanity's demonstration of superior military technology had led not to fears of a new conqueror, but to hope for a different kind of galactic civilization. Earth had proven that technological advancement didn't have to follow predictable paths, that strength didn't have to mean domination. The galaxy's changing, Chen observed. The old empires built on brute force and technological intimidation are giving way to something new. Species that were afraid to experiment, to try different approaches, are starting to innovate again. The holographic displays showed scenes from various worlds, former Craxan subjects developing their own unique technologies, younger civilizations exploring alternative paths to the stars, even the Craxan themselves beginning to question their rigid technological hierarchy. We've received another interesting request, Rivera added, his expression thoughtful. Several species want to establish a joint research initiative. They believe combining different technological approaches might lead to breakthroughs none of US could achieve alone. Chen nodded. This was what humanity had hoped for, not just proving their strength, but catalyzing a transformation in how civilizations approach technological development. The age of linear advancement and technological superiority was giving way to an era of diversity and innovation. There are still threats out there, she reminded herself. Other empires, hidden species, civilizations that might see Earth's revelation as a challenge rather than an opportunity. But that was precisely why humanity maintained its policy of controlled revelation. The quantum shadows still held secrets, the ghost fleet was still larger than anyone suspected, and Earth's defensive capabilities remained partly hidden. They had learned the value of keeping certain cards hidden, even in an age of supposed transparency. The galaxies learned that appearances can be deceiving, Rivera mused. That primitive radio signals might hide quantum communications, that apparent technological backwardness might mask unprecedented advancement. They've learned something more important, Chen corrected. They've learned that the most dangerous species isn't the one with the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons. It's the one that can make you believe it's harmless until it's too late. As if to emphasize her point, the displays showed the former Kraxan invasion fleet, now permanently anchored in Earth orbit as a monument. Their quantum drives had been replaced with conventional engines, their advanced weapons stripped away. They served as a reminder to every visitor, this is what happens when you underestimate humanity. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of empires built on technological superiority was ending, replaced by an era where innovation and adaptability mattered more than brute force. And at the center of it all was Earth, a planet that had fooled the galaxy's greatest powers by simply letting them fool themselves. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had changed the rules of galactic civilization. And in doing so, they had ensured that no species would ever again mistake patience for weakness, or apparent primitiveness for actual vulnerability. The stars belonged to those who could imagine new ways to reach them. And humanity's imagination had proven to be its greatest weapon of all.